Okay. It's been 2 weeks, but the power rankings is back, guys. And what I'm gonna be doing with this power rankings is that the teams that you see in this power rankings is based on what happened in the last 2 weeks. Since I didn't do a power rankings last week, I might as well just kind of like rank these teams in terms of what happened with their last two game or the last three games. If one of these teams did play in that midweek game back in match week number 14. But either way, let's actually begin. And we start in 23rd, and we have another new team in 23rd place, although this team was here before. And that, of course, is Colorado, who lost 2 spots from 2 weeks ago in my power rankings, and it shouldn't be a very big surprise why they are dead last. I mean, they have the longest losing streak right now in MLS. They are literally approaching record of the longest losing streak in MLS history. And yeah, that's why they belong in 23rd. And in 22nd, and this team stays at the same spot, and as long as Colorado does not start winning and find a way to win a game, I think this is where the Quakes are going to be belong, because the Quakes are really bad right now, but they are not bad enough for me to say that they belong in 23rd, because at least they're not like Colorado right now that hasn't won a single game in a very long time. So as long as if Colorado does not win or do not get a draw, the Quakes is going to stuck in that 22nd spot no matter how bad things get. But in 21st, and this is a team that have been also losing a lot, and that of course is Seattle, who lost 6 spots from last week, and they actually tie with another team that currently is the biggest loser from this power rankings. And yeah, I mean, Seattle, it is really bad right now. I mean, nobody on this team can literally score. They've been getting shut out 5 of their last 6 matches. They have scored only 7 goals this season, which is literally the only team in the league that have not scored double-digit goal. And the next team that have scored the least goal in the league has scored twice as much as they have so far this season. I mean, it is incredible how Seattle is literally thinking that scoring goals is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube puzzle, because right now this team is just they are just not only bad, but they just cannot find an answer in terms of the goal scoring department, and it's hence why game after game they lose. But in 20th, and this team moved up 3 spots from last week or 2 weeks ago, and that of course is Montreal. So Montreal of course won the last match, and because they won the last match, and because teams like Seattle, the Quakes, and Colorado, none of them win those matches, they have the benefit of the doubt that they moved up from dead last. If they didn't win this one, or if they didn't get a draw out of this one against Houston, they probably would have stayed in that 23rd spot. But they got a win. They jumped up to 20th. And in 19th place, this team's moved 1 spot from last week or 2 weeks ago. And that, of course, is Vancouver. So the Whitecaps finally got a win after a lot of draws in their last couple of games. And, you know, it was against Colorado, so I don't really want to move them up too much. And even though it is on the road, Colorado has lost 7 in a row. Like, literally, Colorado is giving away 3 points to everybody in the last 7 games. So Vancouver is going to be there in 19th. And in 18th, this team dropped 6 spots from 2 weeks ago. And this is another team that also has a long losing streak, and also have the second longest losing streak right now. And that, of course, is Orlando City, who has now lost 5 in a row after that loss against NYCFC. And like I said many times, the heat is started to build up once again in Jason Kreis's chair. I mean, he is going to be on the verge of getting the sack if he does not turn this thing around in these next couple of weeks. But in 17th place, and by the way, Orlando City was also shared the title of the biggest loser and the team that dropped the most with Seattle with 6 spots. And in 17th place, this team moved up 2 spots from last week, and that of course is Chicago. So Chicago got back-to-back wins, and as inconsistent their form is, if you get back-to-back wins, and even though they did lose one of their other game before this back-to-back victory, they moved up 2 spots and moved up into 17th place. And in 16th place, this team lost 5 spots from last week, or 2 weeks ago, is Houston. And it has not been a good last 2 weeks if you're a Dynamo fan. I mean, you lose to Montreal of all team this week. I mean, it just felt like the curse that they have on the road, it hasn't been broken whatsoever. That game against Chicago where they actually won on the road was just probably one game where the football gods would actually give them that one, and then they will continue to curse them throughout the rest of the season, and how they will probably never win another road game before the end of the season. So yeah, Houston took a huge tumble. And in 15th place, this team dropped 1 spot from last week, and that of course is Minnesota. So Minnesota did beat the worst team in the league, that is Montreal, a couple of weeks ago, but then they lost to Sporting KC, and they lost them 4-1 is the final score. And yeah, Minnesota find themselves back into 15th place. And in 14th place, this team moved up 2 spots from 2 weeks ago, and that, of course, is DC United. So DC United didn't play this week, but last week they played against LAFC. They got a crucial point, and because of that, they moved up 2 spots from that. And the fact that some of the team around them lost, they get the benefit of the doubt that they get to moved up some spots. And in 13th place, this team stays the same, and that of course is Philadelphia. So Philly got a big win at home 2 weeks ago, but they completely got destroyed. Well, I wouldn't say completely got destroyed, but they pretty much just lost their heads in that game against Atlanta, and they lost 3-1. So if you balance the win and the loss kind of ratio, that means that they'll probably just stay the same spot, which is 13th place. And Philly, even with this loss against Atlanta, they're not very far away from the red line. I think they're only like 2 or 3 points above or below the red line, so they're not that far away. They definitely look like a team that, if they can somehow start to figure out their goal scoring department and how to actually finish a ball, a shot into the back of the net, or even just not go down to like 9-man like what they did in that game against Atlanta, they can definitely find themselves above the red line and certainly pass a team that they're probably going to be fighting for that last spot, New England, to potentially make it into the playoffs this season. And in 12th place, this team moved up 5 spots from last week, and that, of course, is the Galaxy. So the Galaxy got a big win in the Cali Classico, but then they lost to FC Dallas 3-2. But then they got a huge draw against Portland 1-1. And, I know what you're probably thinking. How do I move them so high up, considering they did lose during this 2-week stretch? Well, I just think that Cali Classico was pretty big for them, because usually when you win a derby game, you usually kind of moved up a little bit. And also the fact that they broken Portland streak in terms of them winning, and that they probably could have, moved a little bit more higher if they did win that game against Portland. But they move up 5 spots and back into 12th place. And in 11th place, this team moved up 7 spots from 2 weeks ago. And that, of course, is RSL. So somehow in some way RSL has started to find their feet and started to have this 4-game unbeaten run, and that includes back-to-back kind of clean sheet against Seattle. And tell you what, they are rising up the table in the Western Conference. They're now third in the Western Conference, and it's hard to believe a team a couple of weeks ago, and how I always called them a mediocre team, are now all the way up to third place in the standings, and they definitely have looked pretty decent so far. So far this season, I think RSL have looked really decent at home. It's just the road form that is a bit of a problem this season. I mean, that game against Seattle, which they won on the road, was actually their first road victory of all season long. And in 10th place, this team dropped 1 spot from 2 weeks ago, and that, of course, is TFC. And have they not blown that 3-0 lead against Columbus, they would definitely have moved up. But unfortunately, they've blown that lead. They did win against Orlando City a couple of weeks ago, so yeah, that's why they didn't really move down that much. I mean, that 3-0 lead that they brought was a pretty... It kind of devastated them a little bit in terms of the power rankings, and certainly it must be very disappointed that they could have easily had their first ever home or road win of the season, and they blew it. They blew that game. And in 9th place, this team moved up 3 spots from last week, and that, of course, is the Revs. So, the Revs, of course, got a big win against the Red Bulls, and they got a draw against Atlanta. Kind of got a little bit lucky in terms of that draw against Atlanta, but they'll definitely take it against a very good team in the Eastern Conference, and because of that, they moved up 3 spots from that. And in 8th place, this team moved down 2 spots, and I have a feeling that they are going to be dropping in terms of the power rankings, and that, of course, is LAFC, because I think that this is going to be the toughest stretch that LAFC is going to be going through, and that these next couple of weeks with a lot of those players going to the World Cup and potentially be there for the next 4 to 5 weeks, that they're not going to have those starters there. It's going to be a time where they're going to hopefully ride the ship and hopefully maybe snatch a point or two there and there to trying to get themselves above the red line after this World Cup, because if they can get above the red line, then this team, I have no doubt, is going to be making the playoffs this season. And in 7th place, this team moves up 2 spots from last week, and that, of course, is Dallas. So Dallas continue to win. They continue to climb up the table, and they are just very close from taking first spot. I mean, they did take up first spot yesterday after they beat LAFC, but unfortunately Sporting KC took it back today with their win against Minnesota. And really, if right now heading to this easy stretch, FC Dallas, if they can continue to win like that, and some of these teams are going to continue to fall, this team will rise up in the table. This is one of the hottest team right now that isn't been mentioned and kind of like flying under the radar. And yeah, and in 6th place, this team moved up 1 spot from last week, and that, of course, is NYCFC. So NYCFC, of course, got a win against Orlando City and against the Rapids, but the reason why I don't move them up that high is because both of those teams are kind of like in a very bad form. I mean, they basically face 2 teams that has the longest winless or the longest losing streak in the league, so you expect them to get a win on both of those matches, which they did. So they move up 1 spot from last week, and in 5th place, this team moved down 1 spot from 2 weeks ago, and that, of course, is Portland. So unfortunately, Portland's winning run comes to an end this weekend, and that probably affected them in terms of the power rankings. If they would have got another win in this game, they probably would have been stay at the same and even moved up. But because they got a draw against a struggling Galaxy team and the fact that they didn't play very well in that game, they dropped down one spot in the power rankings. And also the team around them did win and they didn't, so I have to kind of like move them around. And in fourth place, this team moved down 3 spots from last week, and this team was at top when I did the power rankings last week, but 2 weeks ago, but now find themselves back down to 4th, is the Red Bulls, who during this time they drew against the Union at home and then they lost to the Revs. So because of that, they obviously will have to move down. And I know the Red Bulls did kind of have to deal with guys that is going to the World Cup and having a World Cup preparation match in that game against the Revs, but still, you cannot lose to the Union and expect you to stay in that top spot. And really, when you're at this top spot, it's always so dangerous spot in. It's probably one of the most dangerous spot in the power rankings, because one slip up and I'm gonna have to move them down, because most of these teams that is behind them probably won, and that's what the Red Bulls kind of fell victim to it. And in third place, this team moved up 3 spots from last week, and that of course is Sporting KC, who after getting a frustrating draw against Columbus 2 weeks ago, they finally got a win against Minnesota, a 4-1 convincing win against Minnesota, and they moved up to 3rd in the standing. And in 2nd place in the standings, it's going to be Columbus, who continue their unbeaten run, just as it looked like their unbeaten run was going to come to an end against TFC when they were down 3-0. They create a miraculous comeback, and their unbeaten run, which I think right now is the longest right now in the league, continues, and this team is very close to. Team is another team that is right there in the Supporter Shield standings. But in first place, and this team is currently at the top of the Supporter Shield standings, it's going to be Atlanta. So Atlanta, despite the fact that they didn't play very well in these last couple of games, they did get a win against Philly and get a draw against the Revs on the road, and they're still one of the best team. Well, not one of the best team, but right now, in my opinion, the best team in the league. Certainly shown in the Supporter Shield standings. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this power rankings. I know this video is a little bit short, but you know, since in these last couple of power rankings I've been talking about kind of the unique factor of some of these teams, I kind of didn't want to repeat myself and said the same thing about some of these teams, and the fact that I'm started to kind of speed up these kind of power rankings. I mean, you realize that most of the last couple of weeks I did these power rankings, it's been pretty fast, and that of course is the case with this one. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.